Mortality. Is it too taboo to talk about?
Whoa there, that's one interesting discussion, FRC fam. I guess it's time to tune in and join us in this Church Alive's November episode.
Hey Rap, I don't know about you, but when I think of November, it's All Saints Day and All Souls Day. How about you? What automatically comes to mind?
Well, inisip ko kung ano yung iko-costume ko for Halloween. No, kidding aside, I guess it's that time of the year that we kind of come face to face with the fact that we are mortal. That eventually all of us will kick the bucket, cash in our chips, bite the dust, meet our maker, go into paradise and the afterlife, all those sorts of things.
Grabe, para namang nagpaulan ka ng idioms dyan. Pero pag-isipin mo, no, bakit hindi natin siya madiretsyong sabihin eh? No? Parang, diba, parang that we all die. Parang it's a factual thing. So, you get eerie vibes that when we talk about, mortality.
Well, definitely, there's a certain degree of discomfort. Siguro dala na rin ang association with the horrific images of Halloween or, just how taboo death can be sometimes. But you know what's interesting? In the past few years, I've been seeing online the emergence of a death-positive movement. Interesting, no? It's actually the first time I've encountered it. It's gaining traction among American millennials. Robert Neymeyer, a PhD and the director of the Portland Institute for Loss and Transition, because of course, death is a loss and a transition. Mm-hmm. He says that it's a way of moving toward neutral acceptance of death and embracing values which make us more conscious of our day-to-day living. Kumbaga, expecting the worst in a sense. In this case, death. And that can help us embrace our reality.
Ayan, kaya pag-usapan na natin yan with today's guest. So we have the Luna family. We have guested Tita Wendy already in our summer episode, but today she's being joined with her loving husband, Tito Roy. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Welcome, Tita Wendy and Tito Roy, to Church Alive. And of course, we also have a good friend of mine who is a working student from UP Diliman. So he's studying hotel and restaurant management while doing service work in a wine bar. Ayan. So let's welcome David de Guzman.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi, David.
Hi, David. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's Church Alive.
Welcome. Wow, okay. Masayang discussion to kasi we talk about conversations about death in families. And, we have a perspective of parents and of course the children. Kaya, tara FRC fam, pag-usapan na natin to.
Actually, very kakaiba yung topic natin ngayon because it's really something that we don't often talk about. And I'm very interested to hear from Tito Roy and Tito Wendy, and of course David, from their experiences in their own families. So I hope we learn a thing or two as we share our stories with them. I think it's really a fact that death is inevitable. It's part of being human. It's the cycle of life. And perhaps the fear of death is actually the fear of the unknown. Like, actually, I really feel that as well. When we are to die or how we are to die or what happens to the life or world after and whatever we leave behind and what awaits us, like all of those things, like hindi talaga tayo sure kung ano yun, di ba? Kasi is it the possibility also sometimes of losing loved ones that we do not want to consider or talk about? How do families deal with this topic today?
Mortality kasi is often an uncomfortable topic. We know that. We know that na eh. Pero ang question dito is, openly ba siyang pinag-uusapan ng mga families dito sa Pilipinas? So, let me ask David first. No? I'm curious to hear about your experience in your family. Do you talk about this, David?
So, now that I actually think about it, mga table conversations namin or when you go out, short answer, not really. We don't really talk about it. Well, just looking at myself personally, I feel like I don't want to talk about it kasi I feel like I'm not prepared if, like, let's say my parents or my brothers go ahead of me. Like, I'm just scared of the thought. So, in my mind, like, I don't want to talk about it kasi parang nakakalungkot naman. And Parang hindi ako prepared personally.
Super gets ko yung feelings na yun eh. As in, di ba? Parang by default, yeah, we feel that eh. We're scared about it, no? How about sila Tita Roy and Tita Wendy? Do you talk about it in your family?
Rarely, but we
Uh-huh.
did. We did, and I deliberately brought up the topic, especially if there's a somebody we know that who, let's say, who died or passed on, and so once, especially now that two of our sons are now in the age of majority. They turned 18, one last year and the other one just a month ago. So I brought up that topic, no? And I would say it was a interesting discussion as well. Varying reactions from the kids when we talked about it.
Tita Roy, you mentioned it was an interesting topic, no? Why is that? Like, did anything come up from your kids na you didn't
Oh, baka
expect?
pwede niyo po, at least yung mga
Baka
pwede niyo
may,
makwento
oo.
about that conversation.
Yeah.
Actually, the initial discussion about it started during the pandemic. We visited a lot of wake. We described to them or we mentioned to them, saan kami pupunta? And sometimes medyo nakita nila na parang marami na, And then one of my sons, si Seth, I remember one of the time that we had discussion. Sabi ko, we're visiting tonight, Tito Joms, he's a friend of ours that died at a young age. And then, discussion about how come he's so young. And then we said, I just had conversation like, if it's God's will for him to go at this time. So, and then and then another week, we visited another week, and then it's an old one naman. And then he said, oh, he's like my lolo. And then, how come? And actually he's sick. So, started that conversation, and then table dinner then actually the two of us really decided to how should we discuss it to the children, because during the time of pandemic it's really a reality. They have to know where we have to be free on discussing it at the same time, just to make them also aware that we should not somehow take for granted everything that we have and even our relationships, because since nung pandemic, di ba, parang kami lang lagi nakikita.
Yeah.
Parang I'm sure sometimes they want to go out, they want to see other people, but at the same time, allowing them to realize na these things can happen. And then kami, parang we have to tell them, what should we do, knowing that
Oo.
this certainly will happen.
Siguro, very briefly, ang gusto kong i-emphasize yung reaction ng no? One of our sons said, scary. So that's how
Wow.
he said. So that's is around 14, no? Oh, the older ones, so it's like adulting 101, because
Yeah.
it's as if I am already telling them, oh, if something happens to me or to mom or both of us, so you take the lead, no? You are the adult in the family. I saw them really taken aback and perhaps realize that it's a reality, that our parents will not, and I explicitly mentioned that one time that we won't be here forever, no, and for you, so you have to also take charge, no, and I noticed the our two older sons realizing, oh, no, so sometimes shakes them off their comfort zone.
Question lang, David, may nagbe-bring up ba nito sa'yo para to say na, oh, ito yung responsibility mo, just in case?
To answer the question, it's brought up also naman. We talk about it. Specifically by my mom. In the way na sinasabi niya na yung mga gusto niyang request pag sa wake niya pag namatay siya, like what kind of songs to play or kung saan yung wake. And that actually gives me, surprisingly, some comfort para nababawasan yung kaba tsaka takot. Ako rin, like, growing up, being an adult na rin, I know that it's gonna happen. It's something that I'll have to go through then. That's how it's brought up in the family. At least my experience. Pag ganito nangyari, I want this to happen. Gusto kong masaya kayo. I don't want you to be sad. But of course, like, in my mind, like, Mom, malulungkot naman ako, may miss kita, pero okay lang naman.
Actually, interested din ako, David. Di ko alam kung may mga naaalala ka rin na conversations mo with your parents as someone younger. Like, similar to kila Tita Wendy at Tito Roy, na ikaw naman yung nagtatanong about death sa parents mo?
Yeah, honestly, like my memory and experience growing up, I'm the type of kid didn't want to bring it up or was really shy to bring it up.
Oo.
As I said kanina, parang nakakaba. So the initiative of the conversations actually come from my parents.
So helpful yun sa'yo.
Yeah, it's helpful for me
Oo.
kasi it gives me certain comfort na okay, my parents are thinking about it. They know it's gonna happen. So yeah, I'm with them naman.
What I'm
Iba
hearing
rin
is a lot of conversations about death are brought into the table. When of course, there's an experience of death. So kunyari parang
Yes.
nung nasabi nila Tita Wendy at Tito Roy na may namatay na friend sila and then you have to explain it to your children. Ako nakaka-relate ako dun eh. Ganun lang din naman namin napag-usapan yung death in our family. Which brings me to a quote that I remember. Sabi nila, the death of another can often crack us open and reveal
Yes.
aspects of ourselves that we don't always want to see, acknowledge, or feel. Kasi ako nararanasan ko yun eh, na minsan pag may death,
Same.
doon tayo nagka-come face to face with our mortality and, nga, paano kung sa akin nangyari to? Paano kung sa parents ko nangyari? And all of that.
It's literally a reality check. As in, di ba, we live our daily lives, we have this grind, tapos biglang something happens, parang, oo nga pala, no? There's that reality na we don't often think about, but it's there. It's refreshing lang na both families that we have here, no, that they talk about it. Kasi some older people in the family would say na, oh, that's a morbid topic, let's not talk about it. Diba? Parang some people would really avoid it. Na, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or it's something talaga lang na, wala, personality lang siguro ng person or does it come with age? Actually, that's also another question, no, na parang, does it come with age? Is it something that perceive in a different light as you grow older?
So baka we can hear from your experiences po, no? Sila Tita Wendy. Nakikita ko kasi yung family portrait nila sa likod.
Yes.
So feeling ko medyo marami sila as a family. So definitely, iba-iba yung dynamics yan as you have shared a bit from kanina na iba yung take ng mga younger dun sa mga elder children natin.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing, parang we don't talk about death and depende na lang sa context ng bawat family. Kami naman sa family namin, it's more of the context of preparing our children yung for different for scenario for the future, also to bring them back to bring them to a vision of yes, death is reality, but it's not the end actually. So then that can be an interesting discussion, and yeah, often triggered by when somebody we know or somebody close to us dies. So I don't recall having such kind of conversation in my family of origin. Kami I grew up in the province. I don't recall growing up that we have discussed that. Wendy lost her parents at a relatively young age, when both of them were on their early 50s when they died because of sickness. So every now and then when we talk about their lolo and lola on their mother's side, that's a good topic as well, discussion as well. It can be an interesting discussion as well. But in general, it's not commonly talked about. We just deliberately bring it up, especially now that we're middle-aged now, and the reality of death is something that we have to face now. And if we would say we're still young, but we already want to prepare for that.
Remembering what Roy said about my parents, even when they were sick, so we're thinking how can we ask them about the future, or even the practical things of the properties that they will leave, yung mga ganon, since we know that medyo yung sickness kasi nila. But even bringing up to a discussion, medyo kami doon, careful kami. Kasi 'di ba parang when you ask them na they are sick, and then you're gonna ask about the properties, that what are we going to do with those. Parang, wait, baka naman ma-offend, yung mga ganon na
Tama.
kahit na, syempre, we have our own struggles at that time, but practically, we would like to settle sana. But hindi rin namin nagawa kasi we know our parents, and yung time na yon, medyo very emotional siya at that time.
Tito Ray mentioned something about also preparing your children, and I agree that's a whole topic that's worth talking about. Actually, we'll touch on that later in a while. But ngayon, ang laking emphasis talaga na like I think it's such a Filipino thing, cultural thing, to shrug things under the rug, especially if they're awkward to talk about. Sa mga relatives, families, and lalo na when we talk about death, kahit na sabihin nating practical yung mga gusto nating pag-usapan. Like, di maiwasan. Like, ang laking factor nun no? And so I
yung
wonder...
battle may battle ka kasi.
Tama. So I wonder nga if it's the same even now in our modern times. Baka you can share some of your experiences, David. For example, sa generation natin. Yes. Siyempre,
yes naman.
Kasama rin naman.
Uy, kasama ako doon.
Kasama naman tayo sa generation na yun. From your experience, like, is it something that you hear your friends, for example, talk about?
Actually, interestingly enough, I would recall conversations with my peers na, alam mo yun, like, we're just hanging out, tapos, yung mga real talk kind of vibes na conversations na, when we talk about it, like, ang tanong that started the conversation was, kung namatay ka na, who would you want to be the ones to carry your casket to your final resting place? And then, of course, you think about, so when I was thinking about it, I was like, siguro my brothers, they're still here, and my closest friends. So, parang ganun yung mga, it comes out, like, in some real talk kind of conversations among my friends, yung mga parang late night kind of things.
Gusto ko yung term real talk. Literally, it's real. As in, kaya dun siya bumabalik kapag nasa real talk na, 'di ba? Reality check, ano ba yung mga deep things talaga within us na we don't usually bring up, pero at least maganda yun na bring up sa friends. Kasi iba rin yung talk naman pag ibang setting, iba yung takbo rin ng conversation kapag friends yung pinag-uusapan. Ganun.
Oo, ngayon may naririnig nga, as we've brought up earlier, there's this what we call the death positive movement. I think it's more popular among the millennials in US that more and more youth subscribe to the thought of accepting that death is coming. So parang medyo preparing themselves kind of thing. And so death shouldn't be something that they fear. There's even an app called We Croak that send them regular messages or posts that remind them to seize the day or value life because you don't know when your time is up. So I don't know how much you can relate to that sentiment, David. Death is something that we should be welcoming.
About yung death positive movement, I haven't actually heard about it. But now that you said na, like, parang it's like a reminder to seize the day, value life, because you don't know when we're gonna die. Parang ano siya, like, for me, personally and honestly, I wouldn't subscribe to something like that. Kasi, like, there could be different responses from the youth. Like, it could be crippling in the sense na, there could be crippling fear. But others naman, like, there could be it could be freeing for them or nakakatanggal ng pressure. But for me personally, when I think about it, what's helpful for me honestly is going to wakes.
Going to wakes.
Yeah, and specific thing about going to wakes that helps me think about the thought of death is hearing eulogies. Something that I actually look forward to ever since I've matured in my life and also in my relationship with God. I've read in a book that yung author recommended an exercise that you write down things that you would want your friends or family to say at your wake, yung mga eulogy nila for you. And that's something that I personally tried and that for me helped kasi freeing yung feeling na parang mas positive ngayon tuloy yung perspective ko on the seize the day na I want to be able to, una-una, serve the people around me and also serve God. So, pag namatay ako, yun those are the things that I wanted to remember.
Nakaka-relate ako, David.
Actually, no, yung whole seize the day, no. Side note lang, kasi yung seize the day, actually, ang counterpart niya is carpe diem, which is the Latin term. And then, modernly, ang gamit natin is YOLO. Doon papasok yung concept of YOLO na you only live once. Actually, I wanna get the perspective nila Tita Wendy and Tito Roy. What do you think about that, I guess, slogan or expression ng mga youth? Kasi when you hear seize the day, minsan motivational siya. Parang when you start the week, parang, oh my gosh, I feel down, seize the day. Pero yun na nga that's like the surface way of looking at it. Pero yun nga, it's a deeper thing, which is yung sa death positive movement nga, na looking at death in a very positive way, na parang conquer every single day that you have and then, live life to the fullest. But on the parent side, syempre, may anak ka, I wanna know what do you think about this? Parang I'm curious to know.
First time I heard about the death positive movement, Chai, Rap, David, no? But our children are, I think, Gen Z, no? Similar perspectives I've heard, no? Yung certain indifference, no? Yung certain indifference to death, no? And it can be positive depending on how they view their perspective of death, no? Kasi yung carpe diem, narinig ko na rin yan many years ago, and I just hope that carpe diem will also be a motto that my children will take, but in the context of a long-term vision, a long-term goal or their perspective of death. Similar to David and to Rap, no? One book that also has a profound experience on my life, no, is I don't know if you've read or have heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it was written 30 years ago by Stephen Covey. And habit 1 says, begin with the end in mind. No? And it has a profound experience, a profound impact on me, because the exercise that the book recommended is that you imagine your wake. No? That's the first part of that exercise, that you go to your wake and then you listen to the eulogies. One from your member of your family, another one from your circle of your work or your profession, and another one friends or from your faith community. Then the author said at the end that whatever you want to hear, no, on your eulogy, you might as well live out your life aligned, no, or with a vision of hearing, no, those eulogies. No? So that's how he emphasized that habit 1 of beginning with the end in mind. Well, I'd want to be remembered as a loving husband, as a faithful husband and a loving father. So I will live out my life as a loving husband and a faithful husband and a loving father. In my profession, I want to be known as an honest and as a hardworking, as an excellent co-worker. And lastly, I want to make a difference in the life of others, no, and to live a life of integrity.
Parang inevitably it gives you goals.
Yung thinking
beginning with the end in mind. Quite literally, parang, the end is death, no?
Death. Yeah, oo. I think, no, parang dito sa discussions natin so far, talagang pinag-uusapan siya. Nakikita ko na pinag-usapan siya in the side, kunyari si David, no? He talks about it with his mom. He also talks about it with his friends. And then sa family naman nila Tita Wendy and Tito Roy, no? Pinag-usapan din with the kids. I think that's a commonality in both of our guests today. And how about kayo, no, FRC fam? I'm pretty sure sobrang juicy ng conversation na to today. It's very controversial. It's very, medyo siguro may discomfort, no, depending on where you're coming from as well. But what I'm seeing, at least right now, and I don't know if you're seeing it as well, so comment down below if you have some initial thoughts on this show today. But it's really apparent how it's important to talk about with your family, the ones closest to your heart. No, parang it's such a safe space na papag-discussan. Parang if you're scared about it, talk to your mom, talk to your dad, or kapag vice versa, yung mga parents naman, no, they wanna say something to their kids. Parang it's really an exchange na very vital to do. No, at least on how the things are going right now, it's really apparent. And nakikita na naman natin yung value ng talking to your family.
Being able to talk about death in conversations. I think, kaya nung sinabi ni David, it can be two sides depending on who is on the receiving end of the conversation. Like, it can either give them hope or give them fear. But one thing's for sure, like, death is normal. It will come to all of us. It is a fact of life. And our hope is that it's something that we expect, but not something that doesn't rule over how we live our lives as well. That we do not cower in fear. It's not about putting our lives in danger or have like an unnatural fascination or obsession with death, but just the mindset that life is so precious that it's not something to be taken for granted.
Yes, actually on a grander scheme of things, no, sicknesses really, cause death of millions. Di na ako lalayo, nasa COVID pa rin tayo until now, no?
Oh.
We're trying to live through it, pero nandun pa rin tayo. It's still the pandemic.
Unfortunately, also a lot of areas in the world right now are at war. Marami-rami rin yung mga nangyari recently eh. So trigger warning lang din po ito sa mga nanonood. We'll be talking about some sensitive recent tragedies. Shootings in schools. There was a Texas shooting in a school by a teenager. Weapons being just on the loose, even accessible to our young people. Quite recently also, hindi ko alam kung narinig niyo po yung sa Itaewon, sa nangyari sa Korea. Familiar naman tayo doon, no? Hindi na ako lalayo sa experience natin sa Philippines. Natural calamities. Napaka-common na may mga typhoon, may mga biglang baha, mga landslide, and maraming namamatay sa mga ganun. Ito mga events na kagaya ng ganito, na pag-uusapan niyo ba ito sa families niyo?
Particularly this topic, we also discussed this deliberately during the pandemic, no? But prior to that, talking about calamities, sa school naman kasi they are being taught how to respond in the event of an earthquake, for instance, no?
Mga earthquake drill, ganyan.
Usong-uso sa school.
They have their go bags, no? So our posture there or our attitude as parents, then something that we pass on to our children is on one hand, we have to be very careful, but on the other hand, we don't want them to be too sheltered or too paranoid naman. you were kasi that sometimes prevents us naman, no, from living life, no, to the fullest. Kung let's not go out na lang, no? Parang gano'n, no? Let's just stay at home, no? So or we won't allow them to go out whenever they have an event with their friends or their classmates, no? But on the other hand, one that is not reckless, no? So talagang we recognize that we would like our children to be exposed, no, to be adventurous, but we don't want them as well to be to the extent naman that they are reckless, no. So now, what do we do after Taiwan? I sat down with my older kids and oriented them. Whenever you are with a crowd, you always be conscious of your safety. So I passed on that mind to them, that thought, and sabi ko, even when you are in a big hall or a big room, my own practice is that I check where's the nearest exit, no. Avoid situations that can be potentially dangerous, even as we don't prevent them from experiencing the many things that are available to them, no, in their generation. But we put some limits with a concern for their well-being, for their safety.
Dito Roy, I'm interested, ano sabi nung mga children mo na kinausap mo nung after Itaewon?
We described the incident, no, that apparently there's a narrow alley that this is sloping, but sabi ko yung ganoon kasing instance kapag ka meron ng nagkaroon ng ng stampede or ng may mga tumakbo and domino na yan eh, so that can really cause a such accident. So they're listening, and I hope they learn something, no, from that discussion. I will be more cautious, will be more careful whenever they are in situations similar to that. Of course, we pray for them.
So for me, like as a person, like I'm really adventurous. I really like going out, like of course to socialize with my friends, to party, to drink with them. But also actually mga adventures talaga na, going up a mountain, biking up to Antipolo, mga ganun na may mga dumadaan ng mga truck or mga the road. Like for me, that's something that I acknowledge na like I really look for adventure kasi yung feeling ng thrill or just conquering a challenge feels good. But just also thinking about yung mga certain man-made or natural calamities also actually gives me a reality check. In simple words, be careful to also think about it. And sa experience ko naman sa family, so my parents, they support us three, me and my two younger siblings, to actually go out, to go on adventures, try new things. But they also do their part to prepare us. Kung like something like this happens, what do you do? So for me, that really goes a long way.
For on the parent side naman, kina Tita Wendy and Tita Roy na, I'm curious if like you have rules in your family, like sa kids mo.
Probably bungee jumping, no? Something.
Actually, having boys, no, actually apat pa lang sila nun. Parang I have to accept na that since they are boys, they are adventurous. And I have to prepare myself na talagang they will try on things. Siguro yung recently, we thank God kasi natuloy yung yung vacation namin sa Australia. Siyempre, ang gusto nila kaagad dyan, snowboarding at saka ski. So, medyo delicate, medyo kabado kami dyan kung sino yung magta-try ng mga ganyan. But looking at on how the safety measures naman or the things na meron in gears, no, yung preparation lahat, parang we prepare them then emotionally. Trying to balance, trying to explore on new things at the same time, safety. And then sa akin, dasal. You never go wrong with that. And yun talaga yung kasama sa kanila during that time. Kasi I cannot be there. Kahit naman nandun ako, hindi ko naman sila kayang i-protect ng the whole of it, no? But really, covering them with prayers. Importante yun.
Napabilang ulit ako sa family picture nila, Tita Wendy. Sabi ko, 6 pala yan, 6 boys. And so I can only imagine yung kaba ng ina, ng isang ina. I think yung gusto rin namin dito i-point out siguro, more of moving forward naman din ngayon in our families. Like, is it a discussion among our children or in our dinner tables? Just the fact that we're already moving towards face-to-face. There is a lot more risk. How prepared do we think our families are given the new context?
So just thinking about yung mga lifting of restrictions na, we can actually go out now. Yung mga conversations namin doon centers around, well, una-una, we don't forget the lessons that we learned from the pandemic the past 2 years. Prevention is always the key. I think prevention is always better than trying to fix a problem once it's there. Yeah, like, we can do this, we can do that, pero to a certain extent lang.
Parang being careful.
Yes.
What I'm hearing always is the balance between living life and, of course, being cautious about the risks that come with the things that we do.
Yeah. On our part, our children are slowly going back to school.
Yes.
There are days that they are there in school. So just a constant reminder, they bring their own food, they wear masks, they have their alcohol with them, and we just always remind them, or just follow whatever the school would remind you of. There's a sense of letting go that this is a reality that we have to live with post-pandemic. We don't want to be constrained naman. We still want them to experience a sense of normalcy after 2.5 years. But always taking all the precautions. Have a good meal before you leave. Take your vitamins. Take all of those, mimic all of those reminders.
Dito ko parang it resonates with me yung situation ngayon that the only way is through. Like wala tayong, hindi natin ma-escape yung reality na just have to be careful. Equip ourselves, equip our family of what we can. Para ready tayo out there, diba? Parang, it's really the practical way of facing it na, drink vitamins, be careful, always be safe, kasi nga prevention is key, as what David said, diba? Pero, I think, on a deeper sense, like, aside from all these practical things, parang, there's always that sense of there's that spiritual aspect to it, parang ng preparation. Like, di ba si Mami Wendy, Tita Wendy, sinabi kanina, minsan dasal na lang talaga. Parang hindi nawawala yung factor na yun na parang, okay, you prepare them, sige, alis ka, di ba? And then sa huli, mag-prepare ka na lang din na parang hindi nawawala din yung spiritual way of, I guess, being prepared and equipping yourself, no? Parang it's a way of dealing with the situation also.
I think just to add to that, Chai, like there's a lot of practical measures that we can do, which I've been hearing. And a huge
Definitely.
part of that is really discussing about these things in the families and talking about it with our children. Paulit-ulit ko narinig yung reminders, like
Yes.
talagang
That's
minsan
so
kasi
true.
pag na-excite tayo ngayon, uy, tapos na yung pandemic-ish.
Ish.
Bumabalik na yung malaking ish. Bumabalik na
Oo.
yung sa normalcy nga yung mga bagay-bagay. Pero teka lang, like bago tayo ma-excite, ito rin yung mga kailangan natin tandaan na okay, may mga
Mismo.
practical na bagay pa rin tayong dapat inaalala. And as Chai mentioned, like I think as Catholics and Christians, of course, hindi lang yung practical sense yung gusto nating maintindihan dito. When we talk about that, there's also the truth that we know and uphold, that we believe that our lives, don't just end here on earth. There's a thought of the afterlife and being prepared for that. And so understanding death also means understanding that and preparing for our lives spiritually. How do you also discuss that with your children? Or kayo, David, sa family nyo? How do your parents prepare you in a spiritual sense?
Sa experience ko about preparations in the spiritual sense for death, I think very helpful sa akin when you would have conversations about having like heavenly perspective, that we're meant to go back to heaven, that we're all meant to go back to God. And my parents would tell me that our lives are in the hands of God. Doon pumapasok yung other ways of living life to prepare us for heaven, by serving God, by loving God, by serving others.
Before the spiritual preparation, Chai, yung practical, very briefly. Siguro about 5 years ago, we got this crypt, here near De La Strada, in De La Strada Parish here in Katipunan. In passing, we mentioned that how do you call it? Cremation, is okay. It's something that is already recognized naman by the church. So yeah, at the end of our life, it's okay to be cremated and to be placed there. And then I would joke my kids, that's so near Ateneo and so near UP Town Center, so you can visit us. So, wag dinadaan ko na lang sa biro, but yeah, those are practical things, that we have in place, at the end of this life. But on the spiritual perspective, just like David has said, we always share that perspective as well. There's a prayer during funeral mass that goes, in death, life is changed, not ended. Going back dun sa begin with the end in mind, when we speak of end, it's not really death per se, but a life of eternity. We always remind our kids that it's not the end, and Christ conquered death. So it's not something that we should be afraid of. Yeah. Ngayon, perhaps there's a certain fear, particularly for us as parents, but it's more of leaving them too early, and that it will be very for them. As a father, that's my fear. Perhaps that is not something that I am really fearful of, but a part of me says, hindi ko pa kayang iwan yung aking pamilya. But at the end of the day, we really have that eternal perspective or heavenly perspective, as David has mentioned.
That's true, yung assurance part. Like, I like yung, kasi nga hope siya eh. No, parang, kaya I think that's also why it's common in the conversation to be brought up. Like, kanyari kay David din yung heaven aspect of death. Kasi it gives us that feeling of comfort. Now it's not the end.
Like, sa mga bagay na ipagpapasa Diyos mo na lang talaga. Kasi wala naman tayong
exactly.
control.
Actually, as we're discussing lang, but I just realized, siguro yung discussing about it, especially for parents, very vital yung readiness ng parents on death, after life, na kung may ganung perspective. Kasi otherwise, talagang it's difficult to discuss this. We're thankful that we come to that point, that not that we're fully ready, but we accept that fact and that we hope in the life after death with God, I remember si Seth, parang siguro at a young age kasi, andun siya sa stage na very parang ina-absorb niya lahat ng mga sasabihin namin. And ang talagang niya, somehow, what he always look out is yung love namin, no, sa kanya. As much as we love him, there is one more person that loves him even more, much more, and that is God. And then I segue it to just allowing him accept somehow in his own small mind na there parang even if we are gone, somehow there is God who really takes care of him. Alam niya na pag mahal na mahal, yung ramdam niya na mahal namin siya. I always emphasize that, but there is one more that who loves you much more than we do here there. Although pag pinag-uusapan niya yung mga death, parang sinasabi niya, I don't like to die. I'm so young.
Hindi mo pa kailangan yung isipin.
Sabi niya sa akin, I don't want you to be lolo. I don't want you to be old. Because he thinks that when I'm old, I might already
die na rin.
One of our sons, no, I don't recall kung sino. I cannot recall kung sino na. But we were praying on a tomb, no? I think it's an All Souls Day. And then he said, who's there? Who's buried there? My grandmother. So he said, I thought she's in heaven. Yes, she is. And then she pointed at the tomb and said, is this heaven? And then Wendy said, you explain it to him.
Pinasa.
I tried to discuss it, that perspective.
Those questions talaga, no, stage ng mga children. Like, I think it's very crucial to talk about these. As we always have been emphasizing. Before we conclude also, David, baka meron kang last in the perspective of the youth.
It's always good for me to be reminded na when I receive when my parents remind me, be careful when they watch out for me. It's always good to be reminded na my parents love me talaga. That's what they want for me. Yeah, because they love me. That's why they want to be careful and all that. So yung masasabi ko lang to the other youth watching, I'll never forget this quote about the Saint Teresa of Lisieux. In Catechism, death just means just separation of body and soul. And kung ganun yung death, if it's just a separation of body and soul, then why would I be afraid of a separation which will unite me with God forever? Wow, you will be with God forever. Yung perspective then that also helped me, and that's something that I also live by. Life sucks sometimes.
True.
Una, life is short. If you just zoom out of our life, you just see na parang ganito lang siya kaikli. But then what's that compared to eternity with God? That is something that I'll never forget. Just to embrace the suck and to focus on thinking about preparing for heaven by serving God and loving Him.
Salamat, David. And
Very
FRC fam, that's a very substantial discussion. I'd say ang dami nating na-touch on the points on death and just talking about it. And I think that goes to show like how important it is to continue to discuss it. I think these avenues, opportunities. I personally thank the guests for this opportunity to just hear insights and thoughts na napaisip din ako sa kung paano ko to i-take.
Ako din, actually, to our FRC fam, no, I'm pretty sure natutuwa rin kayo kasi we're able to bring this conversation to you, to your tables, to your homes, no? And maybe this would be a start for you to talk about it openly with your families. And hopefully, we get to, open your hearts to not be scared and to realize na, it's not something to be feared. No, it's something to be talked about and prepared for. Kasi at the end of the day, you have your families to talk about it. So if you have worries, I really like yung may sense of comfort ng love na sinabi ni Tita Wendy earlier, no? Ina-assure nila yung kids nila. Like, parang kung wala man sila, meron pa rin maglo-love sa kanila. Much bigger, diba? Than them. And gusto ko rin yung naging perspective ni David na, diba parang sinasabi niya na hindi dapat tayo matakot. Diba? It's a very strong statement, no? Kasi nga parang it's a very delicate topic to talk about. Ako rin, I wanted to thank both of you, all of our guests here na pinag-usapan natin yung experiences natin with our families and also within ourselves about this topic. Kasi it's really something sensitive Kasi naglalaban yung practical side and yung emotional side. So, ang ganda lang makita kung paano natin siya pinamanage together with our families. The awareness of it, yung pagiging, di ba, awareness of that reality, is that it brings value to the life that we have. Di ba? Pag-isipin mo, thinking of it is parang, minsan natatakot ka, di ba? Parang, oh my gosh, nakakatakot, anong mangyayari sa akin after, blah, 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 and then spiral down ka na. Pero actually, pag-isipin mo, life, like what David said, life is indeed short. But we should not be living it with fear. Na actually, as scientist Marie Curie said, na nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Na I think on a daily basis, we try to do that. Pero on a deeper sense, with death included in mind, parang now's the time to really understand it more. And that we should fear it less. We should talk to our families, talk to our parents, talk to our siblings, talk to our friends even. Parang preparation doesn't mean na we're looking for death eh.
Yeah.
Diba? Parang it just means we're aware of it, and parang good din na we were able to avoid the threats to life and to be more attuned to things that we should value while we're living. Parang balance lang yung pagiging YOLO natin, diba? Parang YOLO with precaution. Parang, diba? Parang dun papasok yung aspect of it. So it's really heartwarming that we have the perspective of parents from Tita Wendy and Tita Roy, and of course, as a youth, as part of our generation, si David. So, it's very refreshing and it's very heartwarming.
And I think dito papasok yung importance ng role ng family in this discussion of mortality. Like, the family is where you really learn your foundations and the things that you'll live up for in life. More so in a Christian family, where we learn our foundations of faith and how we deal with death and the afterlife, diba? Like, family is a loving and trustworthy environment and the source of support, comfort, and consolation. And who better to help you deal with these unpleasant and difficult conversations sometimes than the family that we live with. It should be a safe space. At least we want to work towards making it a safe environment for these kinds of conversations to happen, so that we're not discouraged to open discussions, especially for the youth. And tayo naman, I mean, di pala tayo, pero the parents who are listening, FRC fam, are not also afraid to talk about these kinds of things. Magko-quote din ako. This is from Candy Chan. Ang sabi niya, preparing for death is one of the most empowering things you can do. Thinking about death clarifies your life. And I think that really sums up also the thoughts and the insights that our guests have been mentioning about, pag inisip natin talaga, especially in a heavenly perspective, we can embrace death more in a way that it prepares us in our lives as we journey towards our goal, which is heaven, of course. Ayan, so maraming salamat again to our guests, Tita Wendy, Tito Roy, and David, for sharing your insights. Again, hindi madaling pag-usapan itong but I hope this really helps, even of course our FRC fam, in opening up more discussions like this with their families.
Thank you so much kasi your stories and how open you are to us, we were able to talk about it nang mas madali rin on our end ni Rap, and of course to our FRC fam. So thank you again.
Yes.
And hopefully this is not the last na we'll get to guest you. And to our FRC fam na never napapagod na manood, thank you again. Catch us in our next episode next month. Again, this is Chai.
And Rap, who leave you with the wise words of Venerable Patrick Peyton, that
the family that prays together stays together.
And the world that prayer is a world that beats. God bless.